This episode of Capes and Lunatics is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
Yeah, surf the beat cause the bass is bubbling. Gotta get it in before it comes tumbling down. There's only so much time to find this kind of rhyme to express my mind.
Sweet Christmas time. Welcome back once again to the CageCast. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey Mozz, so good you're here for Soul Brother number 1, Season 2, Electric Boogaloo, Episode 1 of Luke Cage. As Luke adjusts to his growing fame and tries to shut down the flow of heroin branded with his name, someone from his past reaches out. Our director is Lucy Liu. Oh my gosh, nice to see her getting work. Chio Hodari Coker is getting our created by credit. Wow, even before the actual guy who created Luke Cage. That's impressive. Oh, and he also gets written by here. Oh, they're only listing Chio Hodari Coker as if he is a one-man band doing all the heavy lifting all by his lonesome.
Well, I mean, I definitely say he has the best name.
Yeah, you know, it is. It's the kind of name you have to be if you want to be a hip African-American writer nowadays, like Ta-Nehisi Coates. You know, you got to have that name that just sounds like, I don't know where this guy's from, but I think he's got something to say. Okay. Yeah, so let's open this up. How do we open up? Okay, so we open up with
stamping the bags with the Luke Cage logo, I believe, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, this is interesting because I think there's a kind of, you know, you always want to have a little bit of rhyme to your opener of the first of the previous season. You know, and you'll recall when we opened the last time, he's walking towards Crispus Attucks. In this opener, we see him walking towards this house where drugs are being produced. Drugs that have been stamped with the Luke Cage logo, which he is not happy about, as you might imagine. Right. You know, and this is one of these moments where I do have to make a stop here and say, what possesses a gangster to say, you know what, I'm going to put Luke Cage's name on my heroin? Because I want to emphasize it, you know, as a marketing ploy, that I want to emphasize this is a strong and powerful brand of heroin. This is the brand you want to, you know, ask for it by name.
Right.
However, which is, you know, because you know that heroin addicts are real discriminating. They're like, oh wait, you just have the Iron Fist heroin? No, I'm a Luke Cage man. Thank you.
Well, no, I think the thing that seems surprising to me in naming it Luke Cage is not necessarily that, you know, it doesn't seem like a good name for a drug, because they want their drug to seem strong. I mean, people put fentanyl in their heroin now so someone dies, so other heroin addicts think that their heroin is super strong, you know. So I think the only downside would be repercussions of Luke Cage getting mad. That's the only thing I'd be worried about, you know?
Well, without a doubt that's really where I was going at in the long run, but I was also just making a comment about the ridiculousness of, because that's sort of the idea, is that, okay, so we decide to no longer, so after Luke Cage busts up the first place, and someone says, oh, I guess he doesn't like having his name on our heroin. Why do you keep on putting his name on your heroin? You know? Right. It's like, we paid for these little rubber stampers, man. We're going to keep using them. You know, I mean, it's one of these things that make you go, okay. Because I'm sure there's other heroin in Harlem. You know, I'm sure that there is, like I said, there's that little Iron Fist brand down the block, little mom and pop heroin shop. Right. Oh, but he smashes up the place, and you know and there is this strong theme that I think we get in this which is the Samson-esque hubris of the Bulletproof Man.
Right.
And of course we do get, both in our title, where we get the derivation of the title when we hear this mysterious preacher, whom we do not know who it is yet, railing on about the Bulletproof Man, Soul Brother number 1.
Right.
And it was interesting to me because although we do find out who this mysterious creature is, I did like this threat or menace quality to Luke Cage's story in this one. You'll remember in the last, in Jessica Jones, there was a strong connotation of with great power comes great responsibility that everyone was fighting against. And here we very much get this idea that Luke Cage, while beloved by the populace, certainly has a lack of accountability. Which I think we get into a bit more. We'll get a bit more of that in the end part of this episode. But
I think it just ends up being the Batman dilemma, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, Batman's a whole other set of dilemmas because Batman has no powers. Batman is literally just doing this for kicks. So. Right.
No. But I mean, like, there gets to be a point where, you know, he seems to be feeling himself a little bit, and, you know, should that be the motivation? You know?
Well, yeah. Well, he's feeling himself. He is in the middle of, of feeling himself, of feeling truly bulletproof. And as we see at the end of the episode, we truly see he has ascended beyond the bulletproofedness that we had previously discussed.
Right.
You know, I don't want to get too into that just yet because I do want to say that for a big twist ending. Anyway, let's talk about everybody else in this episode. Misty.
Shades. Oh, Shades. Yeah,
no, let's talk Shades. What do you want to say about Shades?
Shades and Mariah. I'm sort of really glad that they're painting it as an awkward and as weird a situation as I find it to be.
Oh, well, you know, I mean, here's what I'm going to say. You know, as everyone will point out, if the genders were reversed, it would not be as big a deal.
No. It has nothing to do with that, but it is weird.
Well, it is weird just because they're two sociopaths flicking each other. You know, I mean, that's what I'm going to say. It's like Bonnie and Clyde are weird, you know. You watch, you watch Natural Born Killers, you know, Woody Harrelson, who actually is pretty dang older than, what's her name? Girl from Natural Born Killers has that baby doll voice. But not the one. Right now. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, but you know, and it's awkward and weird because these are people who don't have human emotions, who are emulating human emotions with each other.
Well, no, but see, that's my point exactly. People, you know, don't want to address the issue because it's not politically correct or whatever. But it is weird, and I'm glad at least that they're making a decision to have people react to it. Like, this is really strange. Like, what is going on? This is really incongruous to how life normally works, and it is weird. And I just sort of appreciated that.
Yes, and careful. And you know, yes, Shades and his auntie,
right?
Certainly are having some questions, and even the Piranha is having some difficulty dealing with it. You know,
right?
But obviously, you know,
who seems to have even a bigger problem than me about it is Shades' new friend.
Oh yes, Comanche.
Comanche, yeah, it's a cool name.
Oh yeah. I don't know if that's his actual name, if that's the name he adopted.
Right. Either way,
you never know. Yes. You know, well, I will say this: I have watched ahead, and there is a bit more to it than just the awkwardness of it. In fact, what I will say is, when you're watching this episode and next episode, there is this strong quality to the show that we're establishing about people essentially admonishing others for their own sins. And I think one of the things we're seeing in this right now is just this idea of Luke Cage smashing stuff up, you know, and what the value of that really is to a society.
It's kind of like, I guess it's mirrored in Misty's storyline too. She's all, you know, gung-ho about getting back, but is she really helping?
Well, yeah, well, exactly. And the reality is she is in many ways not.
Right.
You know, at the moment, you know, and actually, because we're still in the first episode, I think we get more of that in the second episode. Right now, you know, right now what we're seeing is how she feels worthless. She's like she doesn't have a purpose. She lost her arm to fighting the Hand, and good for her, defeating the Hand. But as people say to her in this, she's got 3/4 pension now.
Right.
For life. And, you know, why are you walking away from that? Why are you walking away from this to come back to this? But she is sitting here feeling like she has no purpose without being a hero.
Huh.
And it makes an interesting contrast to what we see in Jessica Jones, where there is this push to shun the hero title and the hero role. And here in Luke Cage, it really is about people who are trying to embrace it. Right. Trying to be the heroes that they feel they should be. And I do find that interesting.
Yeah, it's totally an Iron Man approach, you know. I'm Iron Man. Like, no secret identity, nothing, you know?
Exactly. Well, yeah, and of course Luke Cage has no real secret identity. He's Luke Cage.
Right.
Although we do get...
his father would beg to differ.
Yeah. Well, yes, his father would say he is Carl Lucas. Although we do get Claire calling him Power Man again. Which is actually Luke Cage's... less used code name nowadays. That actually is his code name. He is the Power Man, but it has fallen out of use in recent years, and I'm not 100% certain why. I mean, I blame Bendis. I think he was always Power Man until Bendis just decided that no, he's just going to be called Luke Cage, which you know, but you know, superheroes should have a code name, you know.
Yeah, I guess so.
And
it's kind of like an anime character named Power Man, also.
Well, there's lots of people named Power Man, I'm sure.
Right. And Luke Cage always made me think of Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat.
Yes. Well, you know, the names may be derivative. Liu Kang may have been called that because of Luke Cage. But, you know, what I always liked about the name Power Man is that it did have this very subversive quality, not dissimilar to naming the first black superhero Black Panther, you know.
Right.
And that Black Power Man, you know.
Right.
Because essentially what it is, it's kind of a play on that idea of, you know, having all your black characters state that they were black in their names, but having one not, but just having the Power Man and just having it implied there that he is the Black Power Man.
Right.
You know, raised fist and afro to the ready. So we do have this idea, and just to get back to some things here, we have Mariah is looking to escape the world of organized crime, as so many criminals have wanted to do. They've wanted that legitimate. And it's kind of interesting, especially when you look at someone like Wilson Fisk, who has his legitimate fronts. Everyone has a legitimate front. But, you know, Mariah wants that Wilson Fisk money. She wants to turn that criminal money into usable money outside of the organization, and she is taking the Piranha's word for it that he can help her do this with some insider trading on this plastics company.
Hello?
Yeah. And, which, of course, is funny because she's trying to make her money legitly doing an illegal activity.
Right, but I feel like that's the progression somebody goes to. When you're at the bottom, you claw your way illegally to get to somewhere with power. And then if you can buy your way out of that and get into the next circle where you're legitimate, and then, it's like you always want the next level. What's the next level when you are legitimate? Is to go back underground, but to be able to do it with more authority, more agency.
Well, yes, and of course that is the quality here that, yes, she is. That they're using the tricks that, as they say, white people used to hide their money for centuries. How do you hide this money properly so that it becomes legal? Mm-hmm. And that is what she is attempting to do. However, as Martha Stewart will tell you, it doesn't matter how white you are. Insider trading is a crime. Right. And you may well be prosecuted for it. So, but that's how she met Snoop Dogg. Right? Yeah, well, that's what they say. Because, hey, they both did time. They had stuff to connect with afterwards, Right. You can talk about being in lockup. Okay. We also have the introduction. Well, I don't think it's the introduction. Is this Cockroach's first appearance, or was he in the last season? I think it is actually.
Was he? I don't recall that character being there.
Okay, I don't recall the character. Face. We do understand that Scarf actually set him up, and as a result, his crime got tossed.
Yeah. Well, I think like Scarf being a dirty cop just gave like a blanket immunity to everybody.
Yes.
If you could tie yourself to Scarf somehow, you got off. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, well, I think, not for nothing, there seems to be a lot of that going around here,
Right.
And so, Misty having to deal with the predation of Cockroach, who has gotten out. And you have in this, essentially, that Hernan Shades wants to sell the gun. Well, no, Mariah wants to sell the gun because it's so legit. Hernan says, why do we need to get out of the life when we could keep our hand in it and do the other as well? Why can't we be Wilson Fisk? And it's an interesting dynamic, and I think that one of the qualities of this is that, which I think will come up later, which is why Hernan trusts Mariah. Because I think Mariah really sees a lot more angles than Hernan does.
Right.
Because essentially we get this whole scene here where we have our three possible buyers. We have El Tricero, the third, Arthur, and we have the Nigel, who is our Yardie friend, and then you have Cockroach, who's an up-and-comer. Right. And Cockroach gives this big speech about how, Harlem should be African-American, not, other kinds of people that are not African-American, that, no cigar-smoking blacks and no ganja smoking blacks, as he says. And then essentially, even though arguably that might be something that Mariah might have responded to in the past, she basically ignores it and goes with who was the better deal, who was the person who could provide the security and peace to Harlem with these guns, and who could actually provide the money up front.
Right. To get her out of her situation.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they give him a little. They give him a dessert on it, a sort of peace offering of a of a Judas bullet and a Judas gun, that does not have the effect that they were hoping.
No.
And they essentially lure Luke into this trap, where he goes inside the truck, then they blow up the truck. But of course, that is nothing on Luke Cage. And as he walks out, he gets shot with the Judas bullet. But unlike previously getting shot by the Judas bullet, although he does buckle over, although he does very clearly state that this is painful, he does not succumb to it. It does not pierce his skin. He is now even more bulletproof, which is also this thing that sort of takes off the actual threat against Luke Cage. There's no longer this magic bullet to kill him.
Right. You don't know about kryptonite.
Exactly. We've removed the kryptonite from the story. And I think that's an important aspect of this because, again, it feeds into this hubris of Luke Cage that I think we're going to be seeing over the next couple episodes of Luke Cage no longer feeling like he needs to hold back, that there's no one who can stop him, that he is like Perseus, ready to ascend to Mount Olympus upon Pegasus, only to be struck down by Zeus's lightning bolt for his hubris.
Right. And
that's how I see these next two scenes, because of course, after all this, after we get Luke doing his dab, after Luke dabs on him, because yes, the most controversial scene in all of Luke Cage. But I think there is a quality to it that speaks to that idea of hubris when he does do the dab, which is this, how you like me now kind of thing. And
it's a complete 180 from last season, where now he's like, "Come find me." I was like, "Really? That?"
Well, not for nothing, he just beat up the Hand.
Yeah.
And now, he just fought a bunch of real life supervillains.
Yeah.
He just fought people with magic powers and, who are on a quest to find immortality.
Right.
And so he feels he is indestructible. And as we see, he sort of is.
Right. But, I keep thinking, is he though, really? Or is this like a really long-winded well, I was thinking, are they going to try to make him think that he's not, susceptible to them any longer, and then they spring it on him at the right time, and he is, and they actually get him?
Well, in truth,
why not take the shot in the first place? Yeah.
You've seen the second episode, right?
Yeah.
So, it wasn't a dud that he was sold. Because at first I thought, they sold Arturo a dud for some reason.
Right.
But then when I saw the second episode, I was like, oh no, it wasn't a dud. And actually, there's other aspects in the second episode that we'll get to, but I think there's a quality here, which is that from the first time we met Luke Cage, we actually saw that he is incredibly vulnerable to certain things. You might not be able to pierce his skin, but you really don't need to pierce his skin. Because he is still susceptible to concussions, and he's still susceptible to many other types of damage that he might get. And I think, honestly, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I kind of, in watching this season, so I've watched a couple ahead, and I realized, I'm wondering if you're going to have this, future. Did they ever do Luke Cage 1999 or 2099? And he's like Muhammad Ali there, because he's just taken so many blows to the head.
Right. Because his bones might be strong and his skin might be strong, but his brain is just a regular human brain, right?
Well, I think his brain is actually strong too, but even still, it's still getting sloshed around, and it's hitting against a skull just as strong,
right,
as anything else. So it's like just like if your head gets knocked back, it's not that your brain is so weak that you're going to get a concussion. It's just that, your whole body is susceptible to these kind of things. So right. I do wonder if that's something that we're going to be seeing as we. I know it's not something we're going to see anytime soon, but it does make me wonder about that quality. And again, to that limitations of Luke Cage. When Luke Cage brings in Arturo and drops him with Misty Knight, there is the captain is immediately like, what are you doing? Right. And of course Misty's like, yeah, superheroes. He has the evidence. It's like, and the captain's like, there's, none of this is really admissible. None of this is going to open this up for us.
Right.
And it's really not it really does not showcase Luke in a good light. He is, I think, in many ways being shown to be overly confident and not aware of things he should very well be aware of. He used to be a cop. He should know you can't just bring a guy in and say, hey, I found this weapon on him. Here he is. Go arrest him.
He's like a fighter who gets too happy, punch happy. When he finds a punch he likes, he goes to it too often and gets predictable,
Yeah, well, I think that's something of what we're going to see. Speaking, this is going to be definitely a good season for those of you who do like mixed martial arts, because it really plays into the idea of as we go on from now, the idea of a skilled fighter versus a brawler. And we're going to get some neat things like that. And to that extent, I believe at the very end of this episode, we do see our skilled fighter, Mr. Bushmaster, approaching Nigel about his desire to work with the Stokes. And we get to see that he has some powers of his own, both in the skill in which he fights, which is amazing, and he does a real fancy Dan shtick there, just totally using his, I forget the name of that martial art, but, kicking his cousin's butt, and then essentially slicing him across the face. And I don't know if that, no, because then he snaps his neck. But first he cuts his eyes, and then he snaps his neck. So it's a pretty intense scene there.
Yeah.
And then his guards fire on Bushmaster. And then, of course, the Bushmaster then rips open his shirt, and you see all the bullets have stopped at his chest. They are embedded in his chest, though. So he's not nearly as bulletproof as Luke Cage is. But he certainly can take a point-blank bullet to the chest and walk away.
Several.
Yeah, several. And that is pretty darn impressive. And, that is essentially where we end this episode. Kind of on a, who's our new big bad?
Right.
And how is this all going to play out for everybody? And I really enjoyed it. What did you think, Mozz?
I think it's a great entrance back into the world. You felt familiar with all the characters. The one thing I wanted to touch on was again, the motivations of Shades versus the motivations of Mariah. I think he's coming at it, and initially I thought, the difference between how they're approaching the situation is simply that she has a name to think about, a legacy, a family, and he doesn't. He came from, the streets. But then I thought to myself, maybe that's who this other guy is. Because at first I was like, is he a little gay for him? Is that why his relationship with Mariah bothers him? Or maybe they're family or somehow. And then I was like, okay, maybe that's the motivation for him as well, is somehow related to family.
I can tell you this, you are an excellent observer of subtle cues. Because there's qualities of what you just said that I did not pick up until they really painted it boldly later on. So, yeah. One other thing we should talk about is James Lucas, Carl's father, Luke Cage's father. And of course, interesting in that when Mariah calls Luke Cage Carl, emphasizing that we have knowledge of you. When that we open up with.
Also, I think to imply that she shares something with him. She has that same duality with the Stokes name.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, that is true, and the Stokes name and the Dillard name are very powerful issues in this. And again, we see that Bushmaster will not work with a Stokes.
Right.
And of course, Nigel tries to say, "Well, she's not a Stokes; she's a Dillard," and that is not acceptable to Mr. Bushmaster.
Right.
But also with James Lucas, the father of Luke Cage, confronting him, trying to reach out to him, it seems, but for which Luke is not willing to accept the altruism. And not for nothing, I think Luke has fair cop to do so.
Right.
As he says, his father did not visit him the entire time he was in Seagate, did not seek what his side of the story was. And his father was, of course, as we know, a man without moral purity either. So his judgment speaks so much to hypocrisy.
And maybe even a validation of who he is. If his father is rejecting, his choices, that must mean they're right.
That is entirely possible, and I think that is a quality of this relationship that I think that there's a very interesting, duality in this story that we're seeing this season, which is going to open up around the ideas of both family, legacy, and hubris. How much of your legacy is what you make your name to be, and how much of your legacy is what that name goes on from past you?
Right. The other piece that I think is interesting is that everybody seems to be trying to claim Harlem. It makes me wonder, what do they think that means? Is the history of Harlem what it is, and then you are trying to make your name in the current story that it's telling? Or are you trying to say that I am Harlem? That somehow I am the best of it, or I am exemplary of what Harlem is?
Well, I think at the core of it, and I think when we see, because I think it is Luke who first says the phrase, "I am Harlem" in this.
That's true.
Is the idea of that hubris. That hubris to say that, first off, that this set of streets on a river in northern Manhattan is anything beyond the people of the place. And to say that you are so much more of it, that you are essentially its king or its queen,
or its champion.
Or its champion is hubris. It is you saying that you are so much more than this place. And I think this is, in many ways what Mariah's point is that she does not want to be Harlem. She wants to...
But isn't that what she gets enticed by her PR person? Isn't that the dream she sells her?
Yeah, well, I think I think there is this building out of the idea of her role in Harlem.
Right.
But I think that at
Harlem Mama, she calls it.
Yes, exactly. And, which we'll get to a bit next episode when we actually get to meet Tilda. Yeah. Oh, no, because the mother, like I said, there's a lot of familial imagery in this, and specifically that relationship to mothers and fathers and from whence we come. And how from whence we come may not be what we wish it to be, but we can make it something better from it. Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on here, and so much that gets dealt with again as we go on. I mean, this is I have to say, I feel that this is a very bingeable show. I think that the episodes do flow nicely from one to the other, and at least so far early on in the season, and so I'm really liking the pacing. And there's a quality to the art direction that I really like. They're again using that very sepia-toned palette that I think serves an interesting thing in some later episodes as Luke seems to be succumbing to that hubris where that sepia palette leads to this redness in his eyes that you get flashes of here and there, almost as if he is, whether it is supposed to be some sort of creeping evil or if it is just that he is addicted. Yeah, I was going to say addicted to the qualities of superheroism. But it's an interesting thing to watch for in some later episodes.
The other thing that I'm finding interesting is are we getting like a little mini sermon every episode?
Yes.
Because this one, it started off with personal responsibility. I think we get something interesting in the next episode as well.
Yes. I mean, I think I can't say. I think there is a running thing with voiceover in this. Like I said, I haven't seen that far ahead. Where you do get that sort of tie to it. Although, again, if you remember from Jessica Jones, you had something similar where it was just Jessica's narration.
Right. Out of all the gin joints she had to walk into mine. But,
Which is a classic noir trope, is that, there's going to be this... Exactly. So, and I do think that, this question of all the gin joints that people can walk into...
No, I'm really excited about where this season's going to go. I think they've hit the ground running.
Is what we're working through here. So, Mozz, any final thought on tonight's episode? Mm-hmm. Yes, I think so as well. I think it is really strong, and I'm very happy for it, and I can't wait to talk more about the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. I think that Luke Cage is living up to... Luke Cage 2 Electric Boogaloo is living up to all the hype that it has rightfully earned. So, Mozz, how can people find you if they'd like to talk to you about Luke Cage 2 Electric Boogaloo?
They can reach out to me on Facebook or email mozzmanzor@gmail.com. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in the old-fashioned email way the way our Mozz and Poz once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. Of course, follow me on the Facebooks or follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet a Cloak and Dagger, definitely this Thursday, although by the time this airs, this was several Thursdays ago, at Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEssser. Look for the two E's in the middle for quality.
For quality. Bing!
Oh, jive turkeys! This has been another episode of the CageCast. Please come on down to Harlem with us once again next week. Good night.